Hi, I'm here to talk about the Western retail markets and what you need to do to get into them. Yeah, thanks for having me. So first, a quote which is super relevant to the topic at hand. Though consumers are ready to spend, and many of them still like brick and mortar stores. And I'll get into this later why this is important, but it's important to have this ability to come into the retail market, especially if you want to make money, which I think most people who are bringing products to market do want to make money. So that means that retail is important. So a little bit of an agenda. I'm going to talk about myself in a little bit. That's why I haven't said my name yet. I'll get there. Then I'm going to talk about marketing and branding, because you can't just enter into a store in a country that you've never set foot in without having some sort of presence. We're going to talk about actually how the retail sales works. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the company that I'm working for and how we can help. So, me. Hi, my name is Jeff. I'm an American. I've been living in Germany for almost 6 years now, so that's probably good. I've co-founded many companies in a bunch of different sectors, including hedge fund services and IT services and a bunch of really crazy stuff. I founded a hardware accelerator based in Berlin called Hardware.co. Take everything that has been said about Hardware Massive and just replace Shenzhen with Berlin, and you pretty much got the idea. So we looked around the community, people who were building hardware products, and seeing that a lot of people were working in parallel and making the same mistakes in parallel and not really talking with each other. So we decided to get people talking, finding out what works, what doesn't, and really sharing their knowledge as part of a community. And the next step for that was to see, okay, now we have this community together, what else do they need to be successful? And we thought that a 2-week intensive boot camp, here's all the things that you don't know about making hardware, in order to help seed the hardware startup community in Germany with people that have been successful. So I have a background in electrical engineering, so that's hardware, firmware. I do PCB layout, RF electronics, all sorts of cool stuff. At the moment, I'm working for Telefonica Next, and I'll talk about Telefonica in a bit, but I'm sort of more doing management now, which means that the PCB layout is weekend projects. Yeah. So, you've done it. You have the product, you are super happy about it, maybe you've even run a successful Kickstarter, Indiegogo campaign, and people like it, there's a market, you know that you have something that you maybe want to sell. And so it's time to bring it to the market, right? Well, there's some things you need to do first, especially around marketing and branding. So if you're coming from China, which many of you are, I mean, that's where we are today, you're starting with a disadvantage. So a survey in Great Britain, and so I'm going to be citing numbers from Europe, the UK, North America, South America, so the Western world. Almost 40% of people in the UK have questioned the credibility and authenticity of Chinese brands. There's concerns about quality, about the ethics, about how they're produced, about counterfeiting, about shipping, about what happens if there's a problem, warranty concerns, things like that, and an overall lack of trust. And so this manifests sort of in the spirit or in the discussion of Chinese products with memes like this, where you have this car that's crashed into a bicycle. Bicycle's fine because it was made in Europe, and the car is completely totaled because it was made in China. It's of course not true, but anyway, you need to know that you're walking into this game at a disadvantage. And it's not just me that thinks this, so this is a quote from Josh, the VP of International Corporate Affairs for JD. You can read it yourself, but there's no question that as a Chinese company, you have to work harder to prove that your intentions are genuine. So what does that mean? Work harder, how? How do you prove that your intentions are genuine? So you need to break through this layer of skepticism. you need to be able to define your own global identity. So you have the advantage that nobody knows who you are, you don't have a brand yet, and you get to determine the messaging. You get to determine if you are the hip brand for youth, you get to determine if you are the luxury brand for people in their 40s that are going through a midlife crisis. You get to determine if customer service is your #1 thing. You get to determine if customer service isn't anything you do at all. You need to find people that really engage with your product. And one of the sponsors, I forget which one it was Clarity, right? Does exactly this, where you find influencers in social media, people who, when they do something, other people follow, and you need to get them to like your product so that it spreads organically by word of mouth. One thing that, a common thread throughout this presentation is that it doesn't matter how big of a company you are, your biggest sales force is your existing customers. And when they have a nice story to say, you can't be there every time somebody says, ah yeah, cheap Chinese junk, but your customers are. They say, no, it's really good, I like this. It makes my life better. That's not something that people can argue with. You need to make sure that you're targeting the right market. So I mentioned before, 40-somethings in a midlife crisis, they're probably not going to buy a connected baby bassinet. And finding out what that market is a very important thing to do. And it's also very important to target that market to where you're selling. Your product may be a great fit for young people in Europe and for old people in South America. And you need to be flexible in your marketing approach, in your branding approach, so that you can be in the right place with the right message. And a good way to do this is, once you've figured out who your target is, assault them. So Haier, which you all know, a white goods manufacturer, sponsored the last big football tournament in Europe. And they went from a very low level of name recognition to a fairly high level of name recognition, because their logo was plastered all over the pitch, it was on all the commercial breaks, and people understood, ah yeah, Haier. Okay. So they found their market, which was people who watch football. They targeted it, and they got people to create positive buzz. Oh, what is this company? Oh, they make refrigerators. I need a refrigerator. And another thing is, you need to get used to customer-centric cultures. So the United States is sort of this taken to the extreme, but also in Latin America and Europe, the customers have certain expectations of the companies that are selling them things. In Europe specifically, there's a law that says that there is an expectation that anything that you sell will last for at least 2 years. And actually, as written, it should work for as long as the customer would expect it to work. And what that means is that customer satisfaction isn't something that's just a KPI point on a wall, but it has a direct impact on return sales, on profit, and it's a little bit different from the sort of buy it and forget it culture. And along with this is this sort of very low tolerance for failures. If you ship someone something and it doesn't work, and they ship it back, and you ship them another thing and it doesn't work, that's it. So you're not making any money off of that person, and rather than having a brand new brand ambassador, you have yet another person saying, ah, cheap junk. Not what you want. So now it's time for sales, right? You've figured out your marketing and branding, you know how you're getting into the market, you know who your market is, you've found your key influencers and you've approached them. What about all this stuff? Each market, so Europe is 1, North America is 2, and then each country in Latin America is 3. Certification regimes, that's safety certifications, that is RF compliance certifications. Depending on your product, that may mean different medical certifications. Just figuring out what certifications your product needs is a full-time job. So localization, that one I bolded, there's more detail later. Packaging. So the packaging that works in Great Britain is not the packaging that works in Spain, is not the packaging that works in the United States, is not the packaging that works in Brazil. And it's not just about the words that are on front of it, it's about how the customers in the target markets expect to be marketed to, what they're used to seeing, and also what you're trying to convey to them. Training. I'm going to talk more about training later when I talk about big box stores. After your customers, your second biggest sales force is the retail employees in the retail stores. If those employees like your product, they will steer customers towards it. And if those employees don't like your product, they will steer people away from it. And I think it's pretty obvious what direction you would like them to be steered. So the point of purchase, this is like packaging but on steroids. It's not just the packaging, but the display and how it's set up. And do you have it in an aisle and an end cap where people are going to check out? You need an account manager for each one of the retail stores and for each one of the countries and all of these things. Or at least you need to understand that there is enough work there for one person. And if you're a small company or a startup, that means one person is going to be doing the work of 10 people or 20 or however many markets you decide to enter. Or you need to engage an agency. Channel marketing, capital. So when you sell to a store, and they sell to a customer, you don't see that money for 1 month or 2 months, if you're lucky 3 months, but these are big companies and they like to be mean, so it may be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months before you see payment for the goods that you've sold. So you need to actually have enough money to survive going into retail. Samples. Not just for the buyers of the big retail stores, for marketing purposes, for talking to the influencers, anything that you need to demonstrate, anything that shows off how your product is unique, you need to account for it. Support, I think it goes without saying that if people have a problem, they need to know how to communicate. If you're doing email support, email only, you can probably do that from one location. But if you have phone support, if you have any sort of real-time interaction, just multiply that by all the languages that you're supporting in all the countries and time zones, and it suddenly becomes a very big thing, which you don't have to deal with if you're not leaving your domestic market. Travel. If you expect to start selling in a country that you've never been in, you should get a new idea because well, we'll get to this again, but it's not really the purpose of stores to do marketing for you. And just because a big chain store says that they will carry your product and put it out on the shelf, doesn't mean that they actually will. And you need to have a physical presence on the ground, one, to verify that your product's actually able to be purchased, but two, to make sure that the messaging and the branding and everything that you've so carefully planned and set up is actually being properly executed. Pricing is a really important point. What you can sell for on your own website versus what you can sell for in a store in North America versus what you can sell for in a store in the mountains of Spain are very, very different. And there's way more topics in this than I could even cover in a week. But there's so much involved in getting your product out there that you really have to make sure that you've done your homework. So on the topic of localization, home field advantage, the #1 rank, and this is total speakers, not native speakers, so this includes second, third, fourth, and these are estimates because these numbers are not very well. It's difficult to figure out exactly if someone's speaking English, and it's difficult to figure out exactly, tell you if someone is speaking Mandarin. But so I guess it's right. So this is approximate total addressable market size just by the language. So you see Mandarin #1 with more than 1 billion people. English #2 with about 1 billion people. Hindi more than half a billion. And Hindi is also variations of Hindi. So Urdu and everything that's sort of mutually intelligible is collected there. I don't want to offend any speakers, but it's easier to count them as one group. Spanish, more than 500 million. But then again, the Spanish that's spoken in Cuba is not the Spanish that's spoken in Mexico. It's not the Spanish that's spoken in Catalonia. It's not the Spanish that's spoken in Madrid. So take it with a grain of salt. And Arabic is actually number 5 with more than 400 million Arabic speakers. So there's a difference between localization and internationalization. Internationalization, fine. You have a product and you need to bring it to a new market and you do the research, what do they want, targets, things like that. Localization is more than just translating. You need to be aware of what's important to your target market and almost more importantly, what you should avoid. So this down here, it's a little bit difficult to see. It's from a company in Germany around 2007. The iPod, the iPhone was really taking off and they said, okay, we need to make a new MP3 player, and this one's going to be the special edition of our iBeat player, and we're going to release it. It's called the iBeat Blacks. And so Germany, no problems. Most of Europe, no problems. They tried to sell it in the United States, and surprise, surprise, people were very upset that they named the product iBeat Blacks. Do your research, because you don't want to make that mistake. That's not something that you can recover from. So, pricing, how much should it cost? Which has more to do with how it's positioned in the market than how much it costs you. So there's bottom-up costing and top-down costing. Top-down is how much do you want to sell it for, and then broken down into how much it's going to cost to get the packaging, what the bill of materials cost is, and all those kinds of things. Bottom-up costing is, okay, here's the bill of materials cost, plus shipping, plus this, and then what's my final margin going to be? Ultimately, if you are selling a luxury good, doesn't matter. Find out the other comparable products in your space, how much they're selling for, and decide if you want to be more luxurious or less luxurious. And pricing is an art and a science and something that takes a lot more discussion than here, but please include hidden costs when you're doing your calculation. Right? It costs more than your bill of materials and shipping and packaging to get an item onto store shelves. You have to deal with shrinkage, so that's when somebody steals from the store, you have to pay for that. Whenever the store has a sale, 10% off, 15% off, you have to pay for that. Whenever there's a return, you have to pay for that. And basically anything that is involved in your product that doesn't involve sitting on the shelf, you have to pay for. And by the way, you have to pay for it sitting on the shelf as well. When we're talking about marketing and position, so there's price is one piece. The 4 Ps, this is sort of elemental pieces of marketing strategy: price, product, promotion, and place. And figure out what category you're in. Are you a luxury good? Are you a sporty athletic good? Are you going to be with the kitchen utensils, or are you going to be with the home appliances? What's your unique selling proposition? Do you have a unique selling proposition? And are people primarily going to be shopping for your product online, or are they going to be physically able to touch it in a store? Okay, so it's time for sales now, right? We figured out all of this crazy stuff. So where do we start? Where should we start selling? This is future. In the future, how will customers behave in the West? Not how they're doing it today. In the future, this graph is store-based versus Amazon.com share of retail. The orange line is Amazon, and the blue jagged line is retail. The reason it's jagged is because it's seasonal. And what you see is that Amazon's been growing year over year, something like 8, 10, 12%, and in-store retail is slowly declining. So even though today, In-store is a huge percentage, and I get to exactly what that is. In the future, people are going to be primarily purchasing goods online. So, start with your own website. This is where you go to test your marketing, this is where you go to test your pricing, this is where you find your early movers, this is where you make sure that you're not making a huge mistake. The first point, all caps, don't undercut your retail pricing. If you have one product that you're selling on your website, that is the highest price that you are, or rather that's the lowest price you're going to be able to offer in any store anywhere. Because if you are selling at a Best Buy for $300 and you are selling on your own website for $250, no one's going to buy it from Best Buy, and that's a huge problem for you. But also, Best Buy isn't going to put your product on their shelves because they're competing with you and they're losing. One thing you can do about that is if you have a special edition that's only available on your website, maybe different packaging or with an extra accessory or something like that, you can kind of avoid it and to have a little bit more freedom, but make sure that you don't kill all of your retail margin in the first moment when your product is for sale on your own website. I cannot make that any more, it's super important. It should be really easy to buy from you. So this is the thing, get a UX person, get a UI person, make sure that the whole process of finding your product, clicking the buy button, figuring out the payment and shipping, and getting it is as fast and easy as possible. The longer it takes, the less satisfaction the customers will have, even if the product's exactly the same. Amazon has done A/B testing, where they delay shipping 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, so that the package is received 1, 2, 3 days later, and compared the ratings of the same products just when it's received later after ordering. And the longer it takes, the less satisfaction customers have. Yes, and beware of holidays in your target market. So one thing that we always need to be careful of in the West is Chinese New Year, where it is difficult to source new stuff from China. One thing that you should be aware of when you're selling to the West is if you're trying to sell something before Christmas, then you need to have everything set up before November. If you're trying to sell something for Valentine's Day, it needs to be set up already in January. Different countries have different holidays where people have different consumer behaviors, and that's important to make sure as well. So, the next step after you've sold on your own website is you want to approach specialty or online stores. And I have some logos. Conrad is a big brand in Europe, based in Germany but available all over, that sells electronics and hobby stuff. HeadFi is an online forum for headphone geeks. Fast Shop is in Brazil, in Colombia, and they're similar to Conrad, they're a specialty electronics store. So what you want to do is you want to establish relationships with these specialty stores in your target markets. They will be your #1 best friend. They have already an established customer base that are interested in your product. They have people on the ground that are enthusiastic about products in your category. They have great relationships with their customers, which means that they get all of the feedback, good feedback and negative feedback. And they really help you narrow in on the exact customers that you want to find. So usually with these stores, they're on consignment. So what does on consignment mean? That means that the store does not buy from you and then sell onwards. Rather, you own the inventory, it sits on their shelves, and when they sell it, then they pay you. This is important for legal and insurance and risk prevention perspective. If something is stolen, you still bear all the risk when it's on consignment. If there's a problem with the store and the store catches fire, you are responsible for all of the product that is damaged. Less commonly, with in-person ones or online, it's drop shipping. So you send the specialty shop one of your demos or samples. They show it off to customers, customer signs an order form, and then you can ship it to the customer. So it's a little bit nicer for you, but again, with the customer, if they walk into a store and they walk out waiting a couple of days for your product, they're going to be less satisfied than if they can walk out with it. These specialty online stores, specialty/online stores, they're really good at bridging any cultural gaps. So if you go to one of these stores and say, hey, here's my IB Black's MP3 player, the first thing the buyer at the store is going to say is, whoa, no. So they help prevent that kind of issue. They really help set up a great product experience. So the people in these stores are super knowledgeable, they're interested, and they want to help you succeed. I mentioned already about the feedback, but they'll also help you develop your marketing campaigns for the local markets. One thing that's really important to know is the bigger the store chain, so when you start talking about Targets, Walmarts, they're not going to help you market. And in fact, it's the other way around. If you don't, in your marketing, say, hey, my product is available at Walmart, go get it, nobody's going to go. But these stores, they will help you. They will put your product in their flyer, hey, cool new product, come check it out. They will send an email to all of their email lists. Super nice. And then in terms of online, I don't think I need to introduce Amazon. So it's important to know that Amazon is both a marketplace and a platform, not at the same time. You get to choose. So either you let them handle the fulfillment, in which case they're a platform, or they just list it and then you do the fulfillment, in which case they're a marketplace. So in terms of online retail sales, more than 40% went through Amazon in the United States, and that continues to grow. And Amazon takes a lower margin than other stores, so they for sure still take a margin, and if they're doing the fulfillment, the margin grows, but it's still relatively inexpensive compared to having a product on the shelf at a major retailer.
How about in Europe? How about in Europe? How's Amazon doing in Europe?
So the reason I included the number from the United States and not from Europe is in every country in Europe, the numbers are slightly different. In Germany, for instance, the numbers aren't as high as they are in the UK. But for sure, Amazon is a valid option for selling all over the world. On the topic of Amazon, let's talk a little bit about FBA. So this is where Amazon warehouses your product, you ship it to them, and then they do the fulfillment for you. It's super nice. It allows you to reach these Amazon Prime customers who are usually more willing to spend money and super happy to get the fast shipping. You don't need to worry about packaging and shipping it other than the pallet that you deliver to their warehouse. The customer service is handled by Amazon. If there's any problems, you don't have to worry about the customer service because Amazon will take care of it. And I'll talk about why that can also be a bad thing. You can also sell through eBay and have Amazon fulfill your orders. So that's also super nice. You get two marketplaces and one fulfillment, sort of all in one go. But watch out with FBA because Amazon, in their infinite wisdom, likes to really leverage the power of their platform. So if you're selling a product and it goes out of stock, and you don't fill that stock in a certain amount of time, they will send a notice to other vendors who are selling through FBA, hey, this product went out of stock and it's not restocked. Can you guys stock this? And the nature of Amazon is that they do mixed inventory. So if you have 3 different manufacturers that are selling predominantly the same product, as long as it has the same UPC, they will intermix them, which means that if you ship a product to Amazon and the customer buys the product from Amazon, if your product isn't unique, so if it's not your product and only you are manufacturing it and there are no clones or copies or whatever or anything, there's always the possibility that Amazon ships them a product from someone else. Maybe a fake, maybe a counterfeit, maybe one that doesn't work, and you will find yourself having to do warranty for someone else's copies. There's some pretty strong labeling requirements from Amazon in order to be able to do FBA. So I mentioned you already need an UPC, but they also have a bunch of other rules about the safety certifications and things like that. And the customer service is handled by Amazon. So who here has bought something from Amazon? Raise your hand. Okay, when you bought something, have you ever had, who here has had a problem with something they bought from Amazon? Raise your hand. Okay, what did Amazon do when you had a problem and you told them about it?
They resent the packaging and resent another order, or they sent me actually twice the same thing without me complaining about it, and I had to reship it back to them once.
Mm-hmm.
They're fine.
Who do you think had to pay for that?
The setup.
Yeah. So Amazon customer service, number one rule, the customer is always right and happy and wonderful. It's great as a consumer. What it means is that Amazon will do double shipping, they will do cross shipping, they will take products back that are working perfectly fine.
They'll refund your money too, wouldn't they?
Yeah, oh yeah. They'll do all sorts of things. If you buy the product and you don't like it, they'll say, you know what, keep it, we refund the money. Amazon's not paying for that. So. For those of you who haven't listed something on Amazon before, it looks something like this. In order to get a product onto Amazon, there's not some nice web click thing and there's no form or whatever, there's no phone number to call. There is a monster spreadsheet. It goes all the way out to like CZ or something like that. There's a huge number of columns. If it's not filled out correctly, your stuff won't get listed on their site correctly. Anytime you want to make any changes in terms of pricing or promotions or products or anything like that, you have to edit the monster Excel sheet and pray that it uploads correctly. Just so you know, there's this sitting behind Amazon, and this is the nice version. So if you ever have to deal with anyone who's not Amazon, it's only worse. Okay, so that's enough about how the future will be. Let's talk about how people are behaving right now. So more than 90% of people buy their electronics in person. Amazon is 40% or something of the online retail in the United States, but that's 40% of 8% of retail, where the vast majority of sales in terms of quantity and in terms of revenue is still being purchased in the store. So you need to get in the store. How do you get in the store? First of all, you have to figure out what kind of model you're going to be involved in. So there's wholesale, which is standard retail. You sell to the store, they sell to the customer. They assume the risk on the inventory, so it's their inventory when it's sitting on their shelves. And in return, they take a pretty big margin. There's the dropship direct vendor. So this is like a showroom, they show the product, and then you get a shipment a couple days later of the product. There's a slightly less margin involved there, but they still take a margin because you're taking up space. And then we mentioned already consignment. So, great. So retailers in general, how do you get on the shelf of a Walmart or the Best Buy or the Target? Between the customers and you, there's a whole big organization. So there's someone whose job it is to buy products for these stores and put them on the shelves. And this is a profile of the guy from Conrad. You need to meet them and you need to convince them. You need to convince them that the product is right for their store. You need to convince them that the product is right in their category. You need to convince them that your product is substantially better and will make them substantially more money than the other products in the category that are similar. You need to convince them that you are willing and able to do the marketing to bring people to the store. And you need to convince them that you are a likable, trustable person. The best way to do this is to meet a buyer at a trade show. You meet them in person, you shake their hand, you give them one of your samples. You explain to them the product, and then maybe you don't hear from them for a little while. Maybe you do. You get a note. Hey, let's have a meeting. The second best way is through sales reps. And then, like, after that, look at them on LinkedIn. Maybe you're lucky and one of them emails you on your Kickstarter campaign, but it's really rough. And this point that I've said before, retailers will not market for you. They are dumb shelf space. If you don't drive your customers to the shelf space will get dusty, and then they will take your product back, and then they will ship all of your product back to you. And yes, you're paying for that too. So if you've never done this before, you don't have any relationship with any of these buyers, what should you do? You should get help. Please don't go alone. There are companies, whether they're called sales agencies, rep firms, manufacturers, reps. These guys are the best. So they're usually located in the same town as the corporate headquarters of the company, which is where all the buyers work. And what they do is they find out who the buyers are, and then they find people to go live in the same neighborhood as them, send their children to the same school as them. So what happens is these manufacturers reps, they see the buyers all the time. They see them at the school lunch, they see them at the kids' soccer game. They talk to them about a bunch of different products from a bunch of different companies, and the buyer trusts them. And in this business, which is very relationship-based, what you are buying is that relationship. So when a manufacturer's rep goes to their buyer and says, hey, I have this cool product from this company, I really think you should look at it, they're probably going to look at it. If you do a cold email from LinkedIn saying, hey, I have this cool product, you should probably look at it, you're not going to get a response. In terms of pricing, depending on the kind of product, how expensive it is, and things like that, these reps, these firms will take anywhere between 3 and 8% of the net sales profit. So when you're talking about pricing that we did before and hidden costs, if you're getting on the shelf, you should probably build in at least that much so that it's not coming out of your pocket. So the other thing is there are branding and marketing agencies. If all of the stuff I told you before about finding out your target market and who your customers are and how your messaging should be and what your brand should look like sounded overwhelming, and especially when you need to do it again for each new geographical area that you go into, get help. It's your job to generate the demand for your product and to drive people to where they can buy it. If you don't have your marketing set up, if you don't have your branding set up, if you don't have a physical location where people can go and touch it, it's not going to happen. The only way for that to happen is either you are magically lucky and well connected in the retail world, or you talk to these agencies. Now you've got your meeting with the buyer. The agent either gave you an introduction or did the meeting himself. What do you do in the meeting? If you have the meeting, they're already convinced. They want your product. Usually how it goes is they pick one day of the week, and on that day they have morning until night meetings with companies for a product. Let's call it a baby monitor. So 9 to 10 a.m., baby monitor manufacturer 1. 10 to 11, baby monitor manufacturer 2. 11 to 12, and so on and so on and so on. If they give you a choice of when to meet them, pick as early as possible. All of these companies, all of these products are going to be more or less the same in terms of the retailer. What they want is they need a checkbox. We want a connected baby monitor. That's their criteria. And so what they're choosing on, since they've already accepted that this is a product they want on their shelf, they're choosing on the relationship, they're choosing on the trustworthiness, and honestly, they're choosing if they like you or not. Try to be first, try to make a good impression, and they're going to tell you things. They're going to say, I don't like your marketing strategy, do a new one. They're going to be really dismissive. They say, I don't like your product name, you need a new one. I don't like the packaging, try again. And this is something where you have a big advantage coming from China. The answer to all of these things is yes. If they say you need new packaging, yes. If you need a new marketing and branding campaign, yes. And it's not that you're saying yes and then you're not going to do it. You're saying yes and then you're going to do it. Because they know their vertical better than you do. They know what sells, they know what the customer wants, and when they say that you need to make a change, yes. Then you need to negotiate a contract. If you've never negotiated a contract before, please consult a lawyer. There are some really important things when you're negotiating a retail contract that you should be aware of. So slotting fees, that's how much does it cost just for your product to be on the shelf. It's almost like renting an apartment. You're renting the space on their shelf where your products sit. Space towards the front of the store and in interesting areas costs more than space in the back of the store. Promotions, so again, you pay for the discount. If the retailer is taking a margin, so margin is how much money they make from every sale, between 20 to 45%. If you have a sale and it's suddenly 20% off, they're still taking 20% of the original price. So that promotion is paid for out of your pocket. You need to figure out how much of the returns you're paying for. And we need to talk about the payment terms. So this, how long it takes for them to pay you. From all of these, the one that you can negotiate, or the one that you have the best chance of successfully negotiating, are the payment terms. They're probably not going to budge on margin. They're probably not going to budge on the slotting fees, promotions, or returns. So, to give you an idea of what the process looks like, the timeline from when you have this meeting and agree on these terms until when your product actually gets on the shelf, these are the steps. So you have your meeting, the buyer wants a sample, the buyer takes these samples and adds them to a proposal for the category update. These category updates happen once or twice a year. Basically, the buyer is making a pitch to their boss. Hey, here are the things that I think we should add to our catalog in the upcoming year. So they pitch it to their boss, and then assuming you're successful, which of course you are because you're well prepared and you know all of these things, then there's a lot of paperwork. Signing the contracts for everything, just piles of paperwork. And then something really interesting happens. The retailer guesses how many units they're going to sell in a certain period. And this guess is based on some market research, and it's based on how many units of similar things have sold in the different stores, and some black magic, and some pretty bad guessing. And then they write you a purchase order. And so be careful with that. If they write you a purchase order that's too big and they can't sell it, or you don't drive enough demand, then you have to pay for it. On the other hand, if the purchase order is too small and they ran out of stock, then you don't make as much money, but then that's a story all by itself, right? You've completely sold out of the one unit that they ordered for each store. And then you ship your products to their warehouses. So this whole process takes anywhere between 6 to 12 months. So again, if you're trying to be on shelves before Christmas, then you had better had started your meeting the Christmas before. So I talked a lot about retail, about how to get into retail, what you need to do for retail, but ultimately the most important thing is to work with a partner. So, what options do you have? I mentioned already the agencies for marketing and branding. I mentioned the agencies for the manufacturer's rep. And now I want to tell you a little bit about the company that I'm working for, why I'm standing here, why I flew all the way to Shenzhen from Germany. So I work for Telefonica. Telefonica, if you're not familiar, is one of the biggest companies in the world. So last time that the list was updated, which was May, it was the 110th biggest. It was formerly the national telephone company in Spain. It was privatized. They own stakes in O2 in the UK, O2 in Germany, and most of the Latin American telcos. So it's a big company. Their brands O2, Vivo, Movistar. This map is their market access. So North America, South America, Europe, and China's a little bit light blue, so they have a cooperation with China Telecom. With China Unicom? No. But much more interesting for this talk is the West, so Europe, North America, South America. So what kind of things does Telefonica do? So I mean, they're a telephone company, they have retail stores. Some of them look like this, the really nice ones. Some of them don't look so nice, but anyway, it's a retail store, and just like any other retailer, Telefonica wants to bring people into their store to look and see what's there, look at the new phones, maybe buy a new cell phone contract, telco thinking. But they're also really interested in new business models, new products, new ways of reaching out to their customer base. So Telefonica Open Future is a program in Spain about bringing new ideas to market. Vira is the Telefonica Accelerator. So they invest in your company, they bring you to Munich, and they help connect you with all of their partners. They help you with the telephone connectivity and all the normal telco stuff. So on the left, Telefonica, there's 350 million customers worldwide, so that's a pretty nice customer base to sell into. But my shirt says Geeny, and the slides are purple, they're not blue. What is Geeny? So Geeny is the global IoT platform for consumer IoT devices from Telefonica. And we're 100% daughter of Telefonica. It's a brand. It's a brand and a business unit and a daughter and a daughter and a daughter of Telefonica. I'm not a telco person. I don't know if you can tell, hopefully. If I sound like a telco person, please tell me, and I will take a very quick walk in front of some traffic, because those guys are really, really boring. So the idea of Geeny is that there's an open ecosystem where people can work together doing what they're best at in order to bring consumer IoT solutions to the market. Because we see there's a problem. There's supposed to be billions and billions of devices connected in the next 5 years. There's going to be more IoT devices than mobile phones. The number of IoT devices in Europe is going to quadruple or quintuple or go up by 10 times. And so these numbers, you have one consulting agency that says a number, and then 3 months later, the next consulting agency doubles it and sends a new report, and then a third consulting agency adds 5 and sends a new report. So there's lots of talk, okay, consumer IoT is really going to take off, billions of revenue, billions of devices, and it's not happening yet. Industrial IoT has taken off. Everybody understands the value of preventative maintenance and getting higher efficiency from your processes. Agricultural IoT has taken off. Everybody understands the value measuring the soil quality, using chemicals only when they're needed, increasing crop yields, decreasing costs. Smart city technologies have taken off. Everybody understands, okay, let's make better use of our shared resources and save money. But consumer IoT, some people have fitness bands, some people have a smart fridge, but it's not really taking off the way that it's supposed to. And we think that's for a variety of reasons. For one, this closed ecosystem that you have one manufacturer that builds one product and it's connected to their servers and you use their app, and that's it. If you extrapolate from the situation today to 5 years in the future, do you really expect to have 40 connected devices with 40 apps on your phone and 40 different accounts to manage all of them? That just doesn't make any sense. The user experience on a lot of the connected devices just isn't any good. So I mentioned before that customers are really interested in things that are easy to use, things that are fast, that give good feedback immediately. And unfortunately, that's not the case with many devices today. A lot of the devices are these island solutions. So maybe you want to have something where your light turns on when you walk in your house, but your smart door lock can't talk to your light bulb. Maybe you want to have something that when you leave your house on vacation, that the lights turn on and off so that people don't know that you've left. But your phone and your car aren't allowed to talk to the lights in your home, and it's not really solving any problems yet. And this thinking of, okay, I'm a big corporation, I make this device, I sell it in a retail store, and then I own the customer. And they can only come to me for service, for parts, for updates. I'm in control. All of this is just not working. So our concept of the world is a little bit different. Let's see where I should stand. Right there. So the idea is that we have elements. These are devices that are manufactured here in Shenzhen or anywhere in the world. And these devices are connected to the platform. They send data to the platform. They receive commands from the platform. And then on the other side, you have applications and services, what we call formulas, which make use of the data and control that's coming off of these devices. And the really important part is that it's the consumer in the middle who gets to choose what devices they have and what services they want to use them with. So you're not stuck in one manufacturer's island. And you're not stuck with the functionality of the device when you bought it. Because at any time, somebody can come along and build a new service that maybe you like, that makes your current devices work better. Or if there's a service you'd really like to try, you can see, here's a huge list of hardware from a bunch of different manufacturers that all fits my needs. So technical stuff, there's a lot of boxes and they're connected with lines. But the important thing to know is that we have SDKs for the device side, we have SDKs for the mobile side, we have SDKs for the applications and services side. They're all open source on our GitHub. I have with me today our embedded engineer, or one of them. I have today with me our product owner in charge of business relations. So if you have any questions about how to get stuff up there, please approach one of us. And this is the business model, which is important to know. The customers who are customers of our customers, so the end consumer, when they subscribe to an application or service, that relationship is outside of our purview. We charge the service or application provider for the data coming through our platform, and also for the explicit permission from the consumer to work with that data. In May of next year in Europe, a new law comes into effect called the GDPR. The GDPR says a couple of really interesting things. First of all, you're not allowed to use data unless you have the explicit permission of the user. So no more simply gathering data in a dragnet and doing things with it. You have to provide data portability. So if the consumer says, okay, take my data and give it somewhere else, or I want a copy, you need to be able to do that. And it also establishes really high fines for companies that play fast and loose with data. Something like 3% of the the highest level corporate hierarchy's gross yearly income, not revenue, income, if there's a data breach that results in personal information being lost. So in the case of Geeny, since our mother is Telefonica SA, that means that if we were to do something where personal data would be lost, it would be a fine for us in the millions and millions of euros. Anyway, so we get some of this money, and then we do something really interesting. We give some of this money to the device manufacturers, a revenue share. So with most IoT platforms, the device manufacturer pays the IoT platform a one-time fee, a subscription fee, a per device fee in order to connect their devices. With Geeny, we pay the device manufacturers for the data that is coming off of them. How this would look, for an example, if you have a smart home device like a scale, which is connected to the internet, and you have an application which shows the user how much they weigh over time, you set up a relationship with the end consumer where they pay you either one time when they buy it in the store or over time, like a subscription. And then we would charge you for the data that's coming off of your scale, and then we would reduce the price because you brought data from your scale onto our platform. The next step's really interesting. If somebody else was using the data from your device to provide an application or service that is maybe completely different than you, then you still get the revenue share for the data coming from your device on our platform. So that's something that we think would be pretty interesting for people here who are primarily interested in building devices. Because now you don't need to worry about also the platform and the service and the application. You can build a device, bring it to our platform, and get paid for it. And so, an example with smart home, you can mix and match all these different providers, and you can imagine the consumer could pick, okay, I want to optimize my energy use, I want to optimize my safety, I want to optimize different things. So why am I here then talking about retail and access to the Western markets when we're making an IoT platform? Well, as Telefonica, as Telefonica, we have access to the retail stores for Telefonica all over the world for the right products. We can find a way when we're working together to put these products in front of people in Latin America, in North America, and in Europe. The way that Telefonica works is that usually business units are not allowed to create competing things. So because we are the IoT platform for Telefonica Germany, we are the IoT platform for consumer devices for Telefonica all over the world. And we would love to have you selling into our customer base. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful so far, and I know that the next couple of weeks while I'm in Shenzhen are only going to be even more amazing. The community here has been super wonderful and nice, and I love the spirit of Hardware Massive. And yeah, let's talk. Thank you so much.